Each book, we are getting into each book of the Bible. Last two sessions, I gave general introduction to the Bible and two sessions of general introduction. What are the things we should keep in our mind when we approach the Bible? What are the general concerns? And they answered many of your questions in regard to general introduction to Bible. And from today, we are getting into the actual books of the Bible. In our 1 hour session, I may not be able to cover all the details, but the essential things I will explain you. And then please take a half an hour to read the pages I supply you tonight or tomorrow morning. Please go through, and that will give additional explanation and additional information on the subject. Even that those notes are not giving everything about that book. Bible knowledge is enormous. You can see in my background, I have several shelves of books with me, all about the Bible, everything about the Bible. Only about one book. Personally, I have minimum 4 books, only for Genesis and things like that. So I keep collecting books. We were discussing what way we can help you with the physical books, but we are sitting in different places. We are getting into the first 5 books of the Bible. First 5 books of the Bible, it is known as the Torah or the Pentateuch. I'll explain everything. Torah is a Hebrew word. Torah means law. The law of Moses, Torah of Moses, or law of Moses. The same 5 books, the first 5 books of the Bible, is called the Pentateuch. The Pentateuch came from the Greek word pente and tuk or tukos. Pente means 5. Tukos means books or book. So Pentateuch means 5 books. That's the meaning. We mean by the word Pentateuch the first 5 books of the Bible. And Torah means the same thing. So Pentateuch or Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible or the writings of Moses. Traditionally, we believe the first 5 books are written by Moses. So Mosaic law, another expression. Don't worry about all those things. You will learn. In the beginning, it will be hard, but when you repeat it in the course of time, you will learn all the terms. Don't worry about the new terms. In the first class, it will be difficult. But as we repeat it, we will learn it. Don't get troubled by the new terms. So Pentateuch, Torah, Mosaic law, all those things refers to generally the first 5 books of the Bible. But at the same time, Torah could be used, or another word is there. I don't know. I am afraid to introduce all the new terms. We will say it another day. Torah, sometimes some people use it for the entire Old Testament. Sometimes that is a generic use, Torah. But actually, technically, Torah means the first 5 books of the Bible, or the books written by who? Moses. So that is a traditional understanding. So Torah, a Hebrew word, Pentateuch, a Latinized Greek word, and in English, Mosaic law or law of Moses or law of the Lord. So all those things in general refers to the first 5 books of the Bible. So that you just keep in your mind. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. First 5 books. One more time: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So what are the importance of these first 5 books? The importance. And the first 5 books, or the Torah or the Pentateuch, gives the theological foundation for the entire Bible, the Holy Bible. So everything we say goes back to the first 5 books. Everything. So first 5 books provide the theological foundation for the Holy Bible, the entire Bible. So the Jews and Christians, we follow the Old Testament, and we have the New Testament also for the Christians. Jews or Hebrews or Israelites, they don't follow the New Testament. For Jews as well as Christians, our theological foundation is from the first 5 books. So keep in your mind, without a theological emphasis on the creation, without a theological emphasis on God as the creator, without a theological emphasis on the fall of man, we cannot develop any theology. Our entire theology, our entire biblical understanding take us back to the first 5 books. And number 4, creation, God as the creator, fall of man, God's dealing. And one more thing, God makes covenant, that God comes into our life. God loves to break into our life. All those things, the foundation we see in the first 5 books, especially starting with the Genesis. So that is critical for our overall understanding of the Bible. So without the foundation, we cannot build on it. If you have to build something on a foundation, the foundation should be strong. So the first 5 books are giving us the theological foundation or logical foundation for every development. If a pastor is preaching, if the pastor says, I don't want to follow the first 5 books, I just want to follow the New Testament. New Testament, you cannot make sense without the theology of the first 5 books. Some preachers say without understanding it. Without this theological foundation, message of the New Testament is irrelevant. So this is the theological foundation. It is critically important. Critically important means very important, very significant, very, very important. Keep in your mind, just keep in your mind. The role of Moses. Traditionally, all conservative Christians and Jews believe Moses is the author of first 5 books of the Bible. Internally, in Deuteronomy, it mentions all these things Moses said, all these things Moses gave, all these things Moses did. And I will give you more references later. Just keep in your mind. Who was Moses? Moses was an Israelite, but thankfully, he grew up in the palace of the most powerful nation in the world at that time. Egypt was the superpower. When one nation becomes a superpower, everything will flow from there and to there. Now, United States is the superpower. From all over the world, there's a brain drain. The best brilliant people, they want to come here and study. And after studying, good number of them stay here. So there's a kind of flow in and flow out. Flow in to get more information. Flow out with the information they flow out. They go out. So Moses, Acts chapter 7 verse 22 say, Moses was trained in all the wisdom. What does that mean? He got the best training, Harvard or Oxford training, the best training anybody can have. In the biblical tradition, Moses is the first most educated person we see. Moses is the first well-educated, the most educated person we see, Moses. So God is using that Moses, the well-educated person who has knowledge of his own people, Israelites, as well as the Egyptians, 2 worlds. First world, his own people, Israelites, and the other world is the world of the Egyptians. So he is a man of 2 worlds. Equivalent to Moses in New Testament is Apostle Paul. Apostle Paul was a man of 2 worlds. Other disciples were, all of them were from Israel. But Paul was born and brought up in Tarsus. and he had acquaintance with the secular world, the Roman world. So he was a man of two worlds. Same way, Moses was a man of two worlds, the Egyptian non-Israelite world and the Israelite world, a man of two worlds. So God used this Moses for writing the early history, or the first 5 books of the Bible. And that first 5 books covers the story of God's dealing with his creation. And in regard to the period, date of writing, if Moses wrote it, it was from his time, his period, roughly 15th century BC. 15th century BC. Moses' period is generally people consider as 1470 onwards is his ministry period. So that is almost equal to the pharaohs mentioned in the book of Exodus. So Moses, his lifetime, if he wrote it, the book is coming from his lifetime. Then a couple of questions are there. In Deuteronomy, last chapter, we read the death of Moses. How can Moses write his death? Is it that he prophesied it? May not be. Bible is not arguing that every word should be written by Moses. That is not the most important thing. Most probably, the death of Moses and those things are his disciple Joshua or somebody added to it. And we have no problem in saying that. We don't need to fight dog fight, we say. We don't need to fight doggedly for saying that, oh, even 34 also is written by Moses. No, the content of first 5 books come from Moses. Some liberal scholars think Moses may have written the core of the first 5 books, but the expansion or the way we have it today may have developed later on. And some people say Ezra may have done it, but according to biblical tradition, Ezra only preserved it. Ezra copied it down, preserved it, and preached. So there is no reference saying Ezra added anything to it. So we are going with the understanding that Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. Some more explanation we will see. We will get into book of Genesis first. 5 books are there, and the first book, general introduction to first 5 books I gave you. Now we get into book of Genesis. Genesis is the focus. So the first book we are familiar. Some of us are pastors. We read and preach from it. The word Genesis means origin or source or begetting. And that came to us, the word Genesis in English came to us through the Greek translation of the Bible. Have you heard of the Greek translation of the Bible? Septuagint. Don't worry. LXX is the short form, we write. Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Old Testament. The first translation from Hebrew to any language happened in BC 3rd century to Greek. So the Ptolemaic Greek kingdom of Egypt, they wanted the Bible in Greek. So they translated the Hebrew Bible, the Bible of the Jewish people or the Israelites into Greek translation. And Greek translation became more popular because Greek was the international language. Hebrew only the Israelites used. The first 5 books, the entire Old Testament in general, was written in Hebrew. But Hebrew was used by only the limited number of people, only the Israelites. But Greek, during the Greek period, Alexander onwards, Greek became the international language, like English we have. So the Greek translation became very popular, and mostly all other translations are influenced by the Greek translation. What am I saying? I'm saying the word Genesis we got in English from the word used in the Greek translation of the first book, Genesis. It means origin, source or beginning. Most probably or most commonly, origin. It is the book of origin. It speaks about origins, the beginning. So beginnings, all the beginnings happens in the book of Genesis. And one more thing I said, the Greek translation of the Old Testament. And the name we call is Septuagint. Septuagint is the story I'll tell you later. Don't worry. Okay, let me say 70 people together worked out the translation. 70 people, 70 scholars from Israel. They translated it. That's why the name Septuagint came. So that is about the word meaning. And the nature of the book is the book of origins. It's the book of origin of the world, origin of man, origin of sin, origin of God's dealing, origin or the beginning of God's call of Abraham, and all those things. All the theological or historical beginning is theologically answered in Genesis. So that is about the nature, the beginning. Beginning of the book. We move on. What's the purpose of Genesis? What is the purpose? What is the number one thing the book is communicating to us? What is the primary purpose? There are a lot of purposes. You can read in so many sources, a list of purposes, but I'm saying only one important thing, the most important thing here. The Lord God, the Creator, seeks to reveal His nature, underline, nature and ways, His nature and ways to the world, to establish His will and bring good news of redemption to all men. So that is the purpose. It's a long sentence, don't worry. The Creator seeks to reveal His nature and ways to the world. For what? To establish His will and bring good news of redemption to all men. Underline the word redemption. So, if somebody is asking, what is the key word of the Bible? What is the key word in the Bible? Our immediate answer is salvation or redemption. That's the word. Salvation or redemption is the key concept of the Bible. Bible is not about the entire history. Bible is not about the entire history. Bible is not a scientific book. Bible is not written for anything else. Bible is written so that we will be redeemed and we will know the nature and ways of God. And through us, God can establish His nature and ways of God to the world once we are redeemed. So redemption is the key. What is good news? Good news is the news about our salvation. Our eternity, we will be with God. So that good news that starts from Genesis. Some of us pastors know very well, much better than what I'm saying. God is giving the proto-evangelium in chapter 3. What does that mean? God says that the son of women will crush the head of the serpent onwards. Redemption is the focus. So what's the purpose of Genesis? Genesis is the book where our God seeks to reveal His nature and His ways to the world, to establish His will, God's will, and bring good news of redemption to everyone, all of us. That is the focus. Forget about the long sentence. You remember two things, the nature and ways of God, and to bring good news of redemption to all men. So nature and ways of God and the redemption. Nature and ways of God and redemption. Come on, everybody. The nature and ways of God and bring good news, redemption. So it's the preparation starts in the very first book. The preparation for the redemption of man starts in the first book itself. And God is bringing that to us. God is seeking to do that. And that's what Genesis is all about. And that He does through a called out people. how God is bringing that message of his nature and ways and redemption. It is through a people, a called out people. We know the calling of Abraham. And we know God preparing them as a people. And from Egypt, God redeeming them. So the redemption becomes all the more clear. So it goes on. So keep just in your mind why God is calling one people. So that God can reveal his ways and nature through that people. And bring the message of good news through that people. For whom? For the whole world. Israel is not called for Israel. Israel is called by God for everyone. Israel is for everyone. Israel should serve the purpose of God as ministers of God for everyone. So look at the picture. It is written in Hebrew. Hebrew was the language of Israel. So Hebrew is one of the Semitic languages. And Semitic language is not written from left to right, but from right to left. Exactly opposite of what we are doing. Those things you know. I'm not explaining that so much. So through a people, God is doing it. One more time, going back to the authorship of Genesis. Generally, I said about Pentateuch, the first 5 books. Now, specifically about Genesis. These references you can note. There are many more. You can keep in your mind. Luke 24:27, John 7:19. Those 2 places. Jesus says, law of Moses. So Jesus is underlining the authorship of Moses in regard to the first 5 books. So if Jesus is underlining, it is Moses who brought the content, the information to us. And I already mentioned to you, role was Ezra. Ezra was a scribe when the people returned from Babylon. So Moses, under whose leadership people of Israel came out from Egypt. Ezra, one of the scribes under whose leadership some people came from Babylon back to Israel. So Ezra preserved it. Ezra taught the law of Moses to people. And Ezra became a well-known figure in Israel's history in the period. This is not a scientific record, but a profound account of God's dealing with his creation. Sometimes we have a tendency to argue that all the scientific things are mentioned in the Bible. No, sorry. Bible is not a book for studying in university under chemistry or physics or anything. Genesis Bible has some scientific truths, but Bible is not written for scientific account or scientific textbook. If we find something, all right, it is part of our life, but it is not a technical scientific record. Some people come and ask me why we don't have this thing in the Bible. No, that is not the purpose of Bible. Bible or Genesis, any book, the purpose is not for recording scientific origin of the universe. No. Genesis is telling how and why God did the creation. And from there onwards, what way God is interacting with us, what way God is dealing with us. So everything is about God and man, the connection that should take us to redemption, that should take us to salvation. That's the focus. So Bible is not a science book or a scientific book. It is all about our connection to God. And Bible is not a history book either. We have history. In the Bible, we have history of so many people, so many nations. But Bible is not written for historical purposes. It's all written for man's ultimate purpose, that is salvation. That's the focus. In that, some history is there, some science is there, some human life is there, everything is there. But none of those things are the focus. We will move on. So major events in Genesis. Chapter 1 and 2 is telling about the creation. A summary of creation. It's not all about creation. It is only a summary. How God can narrate these creation story of the entire universe in 2 chapters of one book. Look at science. It takes this much big books to explain one phenomenon. But in Genesis chapter 1 and 2, we see more than 30 phenomena. So all these phenomena, God is summarizing, Moses is summarizing for our information. Creation story is not all about the creation, but whatever we need to know about creation. That's all in regard to our salvation. Number 2, the fall, 3 and 4, chapter 3 and 4. And then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the flood, Noah and the flood and all those things. These are roughly saying. Then the Babel, some story about Babel where people wanted to build a huge building that touches heaven, 10 and 11. Then 12 onwards, the story of Abraham and his children. Abraham and the call of Abraham, 12 to 38. Then the descent into Egypt, 39 to 50. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. 4 patriarchal or patriarchs are mentioned. Who are the patriarchs? Patriarchs are the fathers. Patriarch simply means the father figure. Patriarch means a father figure. Abraham is the topmost father figure. Then his son Isaac is the next patriarch or father figure. Then comes Jacob. Then Joseph became significant among the 12. So Joseph also is called one of the patriarchs. So the story of Abraham, story of Isaac, story of Jacob, and story of Joseph. All these things are mentioned in Genesis. This is overall idea, a rough idea, not so much detail. And when you read the textbook, you will get an explanation of all these things. Whatever I explained by my words, you will have in the book, and more information in the notes I am supplying you. So that is about those things. Then it's a spiritual interpretation of history. It is not pure history or history of everything, but spiritual. The focus, the goal of any book in the Bible is spiritual. It is to do with our inside, the ultimate longing of our soul. So it is not narrating everything. It is addressing the spiritual part of man, the focus. Along with that, stories are there. What happened to Cain and Abel is there. What happened to Noah's children are there. All those things are there. But the focus is the spiritual growth, spiritual edification. And again, we can divide the book into 2, 1 to 11, prehistoric period, 12 to 15, 50, historic period, because 12 onwards, we have parallel history. And 12 onwards, we can find a lot of sources. Archaeologists have discovered a lot of material from 20th century BC onwards. Hammurabi codes and lot of archaeological excavations brought a lot of material. All those materials are going hand in hand or parallel with the biblical story from chapter 12 onwards, Abraham's call onwards, from Chaldean period. From among the Chaldeans, Abraham came out. From that period onwards, we have got more historical support, references from the secular world we have. So we call it historic period from then onwards. Before that, prehistoric period. And one question people ask is, how Moses come to know this prehistoric period? How Moses come to know about it? Our first answer is, when Moses spent days and days, minimum 120 days with God alone, 3 into 40, and Mount Sinai, God revealed it to Moses. Or Moses got educated by God. God educated him. And number 2, the second way we answer that question is, Moses was the most educated person in the biblical history until then, and he had all the wisdom of the Egyptians. And when we look into the stories of the Bible, all the available information until then, Moses collected, and then he is spiritually interpreting it. He is bringing the spiritual message of all the story. In the world, there were stories of a flood, stories of creation, all those things were there, existing among people, orally transmitted, people communicating by word of mouth, people were communicating. And Moses is bringing together everything with a divine perspective, a spiritual perspective, as he spent time with God. As he spent time with God, he is spiritually processing the information he collected or he got or God trained. Everything is from God. Even the Egyptian training is by God's plan. His birth was God's plan. His protection by the special way. He was also cast into Nile, River Nile, but God's protection, he experienced that. Everything was provisional. God's provision, God's miracle, God's hand was there. So Moses collected all those information and interpreted it spiritually, because he was guided by the hand of God. God spoke to him directly. Moses, God spoke to him directly. It is not through an angel. It is God speaking to him directly. That is something immensely important. Minimum 120 days, he sat with God. And that's enough for a person like Moses, who is brilliant, educated in the palace, to grasp the will and ways of God. The will and ways of God, Moses could understand directly from God. And then what? God wrote the 10 Commandments for Moses. And that's the only portion in the entire Bible God wrote with his own hands, the 10 Commandments. To whom God gave that? To Moses he gave it. So the 10 Commandments God wrote, and the rest he instructed. That is our answer for that question. So now over to you for your questions. And what I have covered is general statements about first 5 books, and then go into Genesis and a very brief introduction to Genesis. That's what we have done. So these are the 2 things we have done. So any question in regard to these 2 areas, come on, you can ask now.
Sir, I have a question. Can you explain that proto-evangelium?
When man sinned, the first sin, when God is speaking to, that is chapter 3, verse 14 and 15, Genesis, God is giving a promise also. Though they were sent out from the Garden of Eden, God is giving them a promise that the offspring of the woman will crush the head of the serpent. And we Christians, we see it as the first prophecy about Jesus defeating Satan on the cross. Sin happens, and this promise, we read it as the first prophecy about Jesus defeating Satan. So we call it proto-evangelism, or the primary or preliminary evangelism. So God is giving a good news that this serpent will be destroyed by the offspring of the woman himself. So offspring, the seed in book of Galatians, Paul interpreted it as Jesus Christ, the seed of the woman. So we call it as proto-evangelium or evangelism, or evangelium is the word.
And sir, one more doubt, that's 120 days. Where is the reference? I think only 120 days Moses spent with God.
Actually, 3 occasions he was in the Mount Sinai on the top. So 3 occasions, actually, except reference I forgot. That's our traditional assumption, rabbinic assumption. Each time he spent most probably 40 days. One occasion, the first occasion very specifically said, second occasion almost equal time. That's why Aaron had to make a golden calf and things like that. So it was also long, minimum 40 days. Could be even more. Could be even more. And third time again, it says in Exodus, he went to the mountain. So that is same mountain. So 3 occasions he climbed the mountain. First time, very specifically, it says 40 days. Second time, minimum 40, it could be even more because people were worried. Even after 40 days, probably he didn't come back. So there's a minimum assumption. And again, it says Moses went to the mountain a third time. And that was the time God shown his backside to Moses. So that also most probably took a longer period. So when he comes back, we read in Exodus chapter 25, Moses did exactly as God commanded. Moses did exactly as God commanded. So there was a longer period for God to instruct. So not specifically in one reference, it is not written. Nowhere we have 120 days Moses spent, but rabbinic writings are saying like that. Rabbis, Jewish rabbis, they say Moses spent 40 into 3, but I may say even more than that. That's an assumption. Rabbis are keeping, but we may say even more than that, because in 40 years desert wanderings, Moses spent even more than that with God.
Thank you.
Sir, praise the Lord. സാർ എനിക്ക് ഒരു സംശയമുള്ളത്, നമ്മുടെ ഈ ക്രിയേഷൻ സ്റ്റോറി പൊതുവെ ക്രിസ്ത്യാനികളുടെ ഇടയിൽ പോലും ചില ആളുകൾ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ചില ക്രിസ്ത്യൻ ഫാദേഴ്സ് പോലും വിശ്വസിക്കുന്നത് ഒരു മിത്തായിട്ട്, അങ്ങനെ ഒരു എതിർവാദമുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ സാറിന്റെ വ്യൂ അതെങ്ങനെയാണ്? അതിനെങ്ങനെ നമുക്ക് ഒരു മറുപടി നൽകാൻ പറ്റും?
Yeah, prehistoric. The question is, the first 11 chapters of the Bible, the prehistoric period, creation onwards. There are liberal views expressed even by Christians. There are liberal views. So how do we answer that liberal perspective of looking it as myth? One first thing we have to remember is, what is the definition of myth? Good number of people think myth is unreal. That's the understanding we have in our Indian context. Myth means a fairy tale, unreal, just fables. But technically, myth doesn't mean unreal. Myth could be pointing to reality, but with added explanation for somebody's understanding. So in Kerala, we have Swadhi Tirunal, and the people believe Swadhi Tirunal was one of the kings in Travancore, and he composed classic music, people assume. But there is an argument that no, there was no king ever lived like Swadhi Tirunal. It is just a myth, and none of these Carnatic music comes from him. Those were developed by somebody else. So it became a myth. But in the Travancore history, they say one of the king was Swadhi Tirunal. But the story about his music composition and all those things could be an expanded version, pointing to a reality, a point to a truth. So first thing I want to say is, myth not necessarily mean lies. Myth could mean truth explained for our understanding. Number one. Number two, the second is the most important thing for us. We believe Bible is a revelation, and everything we believe makes sense only if we believe revelation. Everything we believe makes sense only if we believe revelation. If you don't believe in revelation, nothing will make sense. Nothing will make sense. So if God revealed so much to Moses, if God revealed so much to Abraham, God told Abraham, in your children, all the world will be blessed. And we see that. That's why we study Abraham. Otherwise, Abraham is completely unimportant for us. Why do we remember Abraham? Because through his line, we got Jesus Christ. The whole world became blessed. So Revelation, if God is giving revelation, God could have given revelation to Moses too. Why should we doubt that? Why should we doubt one part of the revelation and believe the rest of the revelation? Even the rest of the story also, historic part also, Bible is not giving pure history. It is salvific history. Actually, I don't want to introduce so many terms. Salvation history. Bible is giving us only that which is necessary for our salvation, not everything about history. So salvific history. In the historic part also we have questions. We don't have the chronicles of everybody. We don't have every detail. We don't have. Bible is only focusing that which is necessary for our God connection, how to relate with God. So prehistoric period or antediluvian or before the flood period, people have naturally questions. It's very clear and evident. No problem in doing that. You keep your doubt. But do you believe in revelation? And believe in this part also as a revelation. God revealing his heart to people. What we know about God is only revelation. And that's the second part. The second one is the most important. Number three, creation, we don't need to argue so vehemently that exactly all the creation story is summarized in these chapters. No, we don't need to argue. It is only a summary for our knowledge. It's only a summary of the creation. It is not telling about how exactly God brought sun. It's simply God brought. God did it. More explanation? We don't have. And science is providing some assumptions, hypotheses, postulations. Why science is providing postulations? Science is the arena where people advance their knowledge, advance their information. And that curiosity is there in us. In that curiosity, what do? We make some assumptions and we call it postulations or we call it hypothesis, and then we do our research on it. And then we come up with more explanation. And now, world over, there are so many assumptions and postulations in regard to the creation. No matter whether you call it Big Bang or whatever, it came into existence, we use the word creation for that. We use the word creation for that. And behind it, God worked. And all the scientific explanations are another thing, as I said in the first class. Bible is not telling about all the animals. The animals, no, Bible is not a zoology book. So the focus is not that. The focus, depending on the focus, the purpose, the content comes. The content is decided by the purpose. When I write a letter to you, it will not include anything other than what I want to communicate to you. The same way, the purpose decides the content. So two things. First thing, from our side, we don't need to unnecessarily argue that everything about creation is there in the Bible. No. It says God created. Whatever is there, we got it as a revelation and we believe it and we trust it. And it is better to trust creation rather than postulations, hypothesis. Hypothesis, okay, if somebody is finding meaning in that, okay, let them go with that. But postulations are finally, the cause is not explained, the cause. And for us, the cause is God and the cause is explained. So creation makes better logic, better reason, better argument because the cause is explained. And in assumptions and hypotheses and postulations, the cause is absent. Without a cause, there cannot be a thing. So that's the third answer, argument I say. Come on.
So one question is there, sir. Sir, when you see the Torah, you must have, of course, seen the Torah, sir. At that time, do you only see the 5 books? What about the other OT? Do they have another book for it?
Yeah, Old Testament we have 39 books in our Old Testament. Moses, now we are looking only at the first portion. Torah, first 5 books, the law or Mosaic law or the Pentateuch. Other books are there, other books are coming. First, we are dealing with the first books, and then we have the so-called historic books from Joshua until the Second Chronicles. We call it as the historical books, the history of the people who came to Canaan or Palestine or Israel from the period after Moses, Joshua onwards, historical books. And then,
Do they believe it, sir? Do the Jews believe that also?
yeah,
Or they
absolutely.
Jews believe the whole,
Jews believe the entire Bible, but for them, three level of importance is there. The first importance, Torah, because it is the foundation, he gave highest value to Torah. And then they give the value for prophets. But for Jews, the historical books also are prophets. All the 4 books are. All the 16 books we call as prophets, and the historic books from Joshua to Second Chronicles, all of them, sorry, not Second Chronicles, all of them until Job. All the books, they call us early prophets and later prophets. For Jews, they are all prophets. So first Torah, then the Nebi'im or prophets, and then thirdly, the writings. That is where we have the poetical and wisdom literature. Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, and Lamentation also is included in that category. The writings, Lamentation also. So all the Old Testament, the Jews are valuing, but they divide into 3: the Torah, the Nebi'im, and Kedubim. Forget about the words, I will teach you afterwards. So those are Hebrew words. The law, the prophets, and the writings. So that's the 3-part division for the Jewish people. But for Christians, we divide into 4: the Torah, the first 5 books, the historical books, the writings, and the prophets. So we divide into 4 parts, but content is same content. Number also, there's a difference. For Jews, the first and second Kings, first and second Chronicles, they are all clubbed together. First and second Samuel clubbed together. Instead of 6, they have only 3, but content is same. The content is same. Those things are there's 2 different way people look at it. For us, we look at it because of the Greek translation. Christians were following the Greek translation from the very beginning. The Septuagint was followed very much. So in Septuagint, this is the way the books were appearing.
Sir, one addition to this question is that you said that the Torah and the OT, basically the Torah, is the foundational principle for the whole redemption story and the salvation. So in New Testament, we look in that light. But why don't they themselves believe the New Testament?
Yeah. That is another significant question, very important question. Jewish people, they take the entire Old Testament as their Bible, and they call it one more word is there. Actually, I'm afraid to introduce all the new terms. Tanakh, Tanakh. Tanakh is the word the modern day Jews call their Bible. Tanakh is the Hebrew Bible, the entire Bible. Torah means only the first 5 books. But for the whole Bible, Hebrew Bible, a Jewish person today will call it Tanakh, Tanakh. That means the entire Old Testament, 39 books. Why don't they believe in the New Testament? That's the question. Who were the disciples of Jesus? All of them were Jews. And who were the Christians until chapter number 10 of Book of Acts? All of them were Jews. That means early Christianity was the Jews who believed Jesus. So one record says, by the time AD 70, the temple was destroyed, 75% of the Jews became Christians.
There's the early church.
Yeah, early church. Among all the Jewish people, 75% became Christians. That means the majority became Christians.
Yes.
Majority of the Jews became Christian. Only 25% people didn't believe Jesus. And they were the ruling class, the priestly class, and the ruling people. And political interest is there. Economic interest is there. And they continued to persecute the Christians with the help of the Romans. But in AD 70, their political agitation made a problem for them. They had a problem, and Romans came and crushed them. And then after that event, they got scattered, and Jews were unknown. Only Christians were known for a long time. Jews were unknown in history until 1948. Who are the Jews? Christians. That means the vast majority, mostly all the Jews believed in Christ and they became Christian. And the question now, actually, I am doing apologetics with the Muslims. All the time they will repeat the same question. If what you say is correct, why the Jews are not believing in Jesus? Actually, mostly all Jews became Christian.
Okay.
And even today, last 10 years time, now we don't have so many Jews actually. More than 100,000 Jews became Christian in last 10 years. That continues. God speaks to them because they use the Old Testament. Whoever is religious, whoever is opening the Old Testament and reading, they come to know that Bible is about Jesus, and they became Christian. In America, if you go to any city, Jewish Christians